Welcome to the Mostly Pilot Night, Mostly. I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host, Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 4 of our new weekly All Things Horror podcast. Our topic for this week is the trilogy of horror movies written and directed by Jordan Peele. That includes Get Out, Us, and the newest entry, Nope. So the first movie we're going to be discussing today is Get Out. This was the first horror movie written and directed by Jordan Peele. Plot is kind of goes along like this. Shows the main character Chris, and he's dating Rose for about 4 months, and they're again having to get away to her parents' house, and meeting her family for the very first time. Unbeknownst to her at this point and Chris that they're having a huge party they have every once in a while, and he's meeting all these friends and family members of Rose's family. And he starts noticing strange things occurring throughout the house, that they have a maid and they have like a groundskeeper. They just happen to be black, and they seem pretty young, and kind of weird things are occurring around them. One thing is his cell phone keeps getting unplugged. At that point in time, they didn't have fast chargers for cell phones, so it's always a big point of contention of having your cell phone always charged. And then he realizes that essentially that the family's having an auction for his body. That the Rose's dad was able to figure out how to transfer consciousness, or at least part of the human brain, into another person's body, so they can live longer, have feats or strengths or something, characteristics of someone else that they want. They're going for Chris. The guy who's going for Chris is played by Stephen Root. He's a blind guy who is an art dealer who happens to know Chris's work, because Chris is a photographer. And really, he doesn't care, what he is. He just wants his eyes. He wants to be able to see again. He wants to see the artistic side of things. And then you just kind of unravel the mystery of what's going on. And it's all about Chris trying to survive, to keep consciousness. As part of this, the Rose's mother hypnotizes Chris and goes into the, I don't remember what they call it, the deep, or the
sunken place.
The sunken place. Under the ruse of helping him quit smoking, but it's a way to hypnotize people, because they can't fully extract the entire brain and do a full brain transplant. They have to leave all the connectors to the nerves and spinal cord there. So they kind of put people in a trance, kind of very similar to the Black Mirror episode where they were able to do that. And then Chris, gets out and was able to survive this ordeal. So I remember the first time hearing about this movie, people are getting pretty hyped up. Jordan Peele was known for his comedy, working with Key and Peele and all this other stuff. And I saw this movie in theaters. I don't know if you did, Salem.
I did not, no.
Yeah, so I saw this in theaters, and I thought, initially, I'm like, wow, this is a pretty well-made movie. This is a pretty good horror movie from a guy who typically writes comedies. I thought that was amazing. I was excited because, this is part of the scene that we were getting with new horror directors coming in there, and we're finding out that some comedians are able to write good horror movies. Jordan Peele is one of them. Danny McBride helped write Alien Covenant.
Also starred in it too.
Yeah. So we're seeing that, every once in a while we'll get, a comedian in a horror movie somewhere along the way, right? And sometimes it works really well. Like, not necessarily horror, but number 23 of Jim Carrey, I think he did a really great job in that.
Yeah, no, it was a cool movie. I liked that movie.
So I'm like, all right, this is Jordan Peele, someone to watch out for if he continues to make more horror movies. And, luckily we were able to get more from him. And, what were your first thoughts when you watched this?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't see it in theaters. I didn't have a whole lot of want to see it at the time. I knew him as a comedy guy, and I was like, oh, okay, he's making a horror movie, whatever. It didn't really, set off any bells for me. But then later on, there was just so much buzz going on about it. There was like a tsunami of buzz, like everybody was talking about it.
Right.
And so then by that time, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go watch it. And then it was out of theaters by that point. So yeah, I watched it I think. Yeah, I mean, I read that. I know I paid to rent it because it was still pretty new at the time, and watched it. I thought it was great. I mean, I thought it was awesome. Yeah, again, I did not expect that by seeing the previews or anything like that. I just was like, nah, I didn't I didn't really care at the time. But yeah, no, it turned out to be a great movie. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was, it was definitely very well acted, very well done. I think everybody was cast did pretty great. I mean, I don't see any standouts as being, bad or even questionable. I thought they were all great.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some comedic relief with Chris's buddy, right, who works for the TSA. He was kind of the comic relief for everything in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he did a really great job too. I'm pretty sure that's the same guy that was in Free Guy as Ryan Reynolds' buddy.
That sounds right. Yeah. I don't know if that's right. It sounds right.
So yeah, like I said, I'd watched it, when it came out in theaters, and then I hadn't watched it again until prepping for this podcast, and kind of going into it, especially when there's twists that we'll get into. Well, not really a twist. We already said it. They're swapping brains, right? I think it was just a good way to kind of watch again, signs and more of the oddities that were happening within it, right? I thought it was just as good on the rewatch for me, quite honestly.
Yeah, no, yeah. Rewatching it, yeah, even though I knew what was coming, like obviously I knew what the end was going to be. It was still a great movie. Like I still loved watching it. I mean, I wasn't looking at the clock at all when I was watching through it the second time. So, like I said, it still holds up, as being the quality of movie. It's not just dependent on its ending or twist or anything. It's just a good movie, straight out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's something that on the rewatch I realized I should probably watch this every so often. Maybe when the next one comes out, if Jordan Peele keeps doing these, I hope he does, and just kind of as a rewatch. And who knows? I'm quite honestly surprised people haven't been clamoring for a shared universe from him yet with all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of leaning towards that. Well, I mean, obviously maybe not the second one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, obviously we'll talk about it when we get there, but yeah, I mean, there's interesting, like, alternate world things happening in his later movies.
I mean, yeah, the trilogy as a whole is like, I don't ever foresee it needing to be a shared universe. Quite honestly, I think each one's a good standalone plot. But Get Out really could have sequels. The family could be not the only ones doing this.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, watching the movie, there was a whole society or order, I think they call them, of people that were willing to do this, and it's already happened to several people, as we saw, right?
Right.
So I mean, who knows how many they did? Because when you're looking through that box of photos with Rose, his girlfriend, and she was with a lot of other people, right? And so we're assuming that all of those people were drafted into this program. So, I mean, how many pictures were there? 10?
Yeah, and that's just from Rose, and the brother's doing this, not, dating the person, and sleeping with them, all that stuff.
Yeah, but he's not seducing him; he's just attacking him.
Right, which we saw at the very beginning of the movie. That's where we got Andre from. We saw him go missing at the very beginning, and then we see him come back, and that's the only one that other than Rose's grandparents, that were transferred into. I think at this point they were just acting as the maid and the groundkeeper. Obviously, it's her grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a okay way of doing it. I don't know. Do you think they could have done that any better of explanation of why they were there, or do you think it was just having them play along, just for the purpose of Chris being there?
I think it was just for the purpose of Chris being there. I mean, that was a kind of an off-putting part of it. Is like, obviously. I mean, for like old white people to try to act like, black folks when, another black dude comes around, how did they think they were going to get away with that?
Right. What was,
you know what I mean? I mean, like,
yeah.
you're talking like a fucking old, white dude that's like 80 years old. Like, obviously you were out of place. Like, just, Chris trying to have a conversation where he's like, what is up with this guy? Because he is not talking like anybody he's ever talked to before.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know why they thought they were going to get rid of that. Yeah, I don't know. Just go hide in a guest house somewhere.
For a couple of days? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just go on vacation. It's not like they were doing anything necessary. I mean, I guess if they required servants that badly, but
right.
I doubt that. It didn't seem like there was anything they couldn't do themselves.
Yeah, I mean, they were there to kind of show, I guess, to show the oddities and, the kind of like having Chris notice things that are off.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was definitely there for
right.
foreshadowing and to build the tension and everything. I get, movie-wise, I get why they were there. I'm just saying, realistically, like, what the hell were they thinking?
Right. And, that kind of goes into, our suspension of disbelief, right? We always have to have some of it, especially with horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the suspension of disbelief part right there for me, is them being there. And I understand, the commentary that Jordan Peele's making with, the crusty old white guys wanting to get into, black people's bodies. I find it weird that it's only black people. I think it just, could have been anyone in particular, but, what are your thoughts of the suspension of disbelief for this movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, your typical kind of, well, not typical, but it's like a mad scientist story, you can't really look too far into like the method that they're using because it's not going to be believable. But it's a mad scientist story. So you just got to kind of have to go, okay, whatever this guy is doing is possible, right?
Right.
Even if whatever lame excuse they have or reason for it working, whatever, you just have to swallow that and believe it. That's, the story's not going to work if you don't. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I think the whole thing stems from, when they said, his grandpa's claim to fame was that he lost to Jesse Owens for the Olympics.
Right.
And then Jesse Owens obviously won the gold and won the whole thing. And it was such an important thing for him to do, obviously, because those were the Nazi Olympics.
Right.
So I think at that moment when, that's when he like came up with that idea for the order. And he was like, black people are superior to us in only one way, and that's the physical, right?
Right.
And so to make this perfect being, we have to take our superior white brain and then overwrite, this, perfect, black body or genetic. What did they call it? Like, what did the brother call it? Like genetic,
predisposition or like predisposed,
right? Like genetic advantages or something.
Yeah,
he said something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically they see black people as physically superior, but of course, they're not as good as white people mentally. This is, so their racism is going only in one direction. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's probably worse that way, but
right.
Well, especially for Chris and the rest of these people. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially, I think, why he got to that point. I mean, they threw in that little tidbit there, so you can kind of noodle that out, yourself, which is, there wasn't anything happening that I was like, there's no way in hell this would happen. I mean, maybe could have, obviously. I mean, as soon as hypnotism came into it, I knew. I was like, oh, she's bad. I mean,
right.
Because any movie with hypnotism in it, especially any kind of horror adjacent movie with hypnotism in it, is bad. It's bad. There's never, ever a good result from hypnotism. It just doesn't happen.
Going off of the hypnotism, do you find that really hard to believe? Because, the people are mentalists or hypnotists, and, they say they can only do it to people that are willing to be hypnotized, that you have to have you have to be in a certain frame of mind. You have to be willing to accept it. And Chris, without knowing, I don't think he really accepted it. He just kind of, he made the joke of, the swinging of the watch, right? The classic hypnotist part.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Rose's mom using the teacup, right?
Right.
To create just a constant sound, like a wave sound of the spoon scraping against the side of the tea. Do you find it really hard to believe that she would be able to do that on, to every person that comes across it?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, hypnotism is bullshit
Right.
That's what,
Well, yeah.
what I personally believe. In the real world, it's like there's no way. But I mean, if I go into movies thinking that, I mean, I'm going to not have a good time in any movie that has hypnotism in it at all, because that's what hypnotism does in every movie that it's a part of. And there's some movies that have hypnotism in that I really like. I mean, this is one of them that you kind of have to just go along for the ride, otherwise the story is not going to make sense and you're going to hate it.
Right. So
yeah, I mean, is it technically possible, at least with some people? Sure. I mean, I've seen people do a lot of goofy stuff, but who knows, how much of that is acting or not, but it does genuinely help people. So,
right. So I mean, that obviously some suspension of disbelief there.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be in order to enjoy it.
Right. I mean, you think about like how many times this has to have happened, right? We know at least 10 with Rose. And it seems like the brother has a more direct and faster method. Rose has to date these guys for a certain period of time before they naturally go up to the house, right? So her process is going to be longer.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's going to take a bit, to date a black guy and then get him ready to go meet your white family in an out of place, very, very white place, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to take some time to warm him up to that.
What about the was it Rodney? I believe his friend's name went to the cops. How did you feel about their reaction to it, saying someone's missing? Do you think that was just another social commentary point in there? Is that stuff like that can't happen and cops just don't take people seriously?
Well, I mean, I think that's just built on truth. Because if you're going in and you're saying, like he did, like, okay, my friend went away with his girlfriend for the weekend and I haven't heard from him for 2 days, and what are they going to say? And I mean, like, that's a very common thing. Like, why would they be talking to you when they're on their holiday with each other? Right.
Right.
So to them, yeah, it doesn't matter how much you say, no, it's not like him. I'm watching his dog, he should be talking to me. They're not going to hear that.
Right.
They're just going to be like, whatever. This is most likely not my problem. I mean, if you're into any true crime stuff at all, you hear this story all the time where, they try to report him missing earlier and the cops are just like, whatever, kids run away, people just, want to get away for a couple days, especially before our modern digital age. People would disappear for a week at a time all the time, according to them.
Right. So you didn't think that's just a normal thing, not just a social commentary, or you think it's a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of both. I mean, but it does happen that way. I mean,
right.
I mean, them like laughing at him directly to his face. Yeah, that's social commentary. I highly doubt they would do that. But
right.
I mean, they would do that behind his back, of course, but they would never do that directly to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, like them going, yeah, there's nothing we can do. Like, get out of here. There's somebody that went away with his girlfriend for 2 days.
Right.
Of course they're going to say that.
Now, if you were put in that situation, like meeting someone and then meeting their family for 4 months, regardless of anything else, at what point would you have been like, no, I'm out of here?
Hypnotism. As soon as she's like, hey, let me get you hypnotized, I'm just, nope. I am out of here. I mean, I would just be like, no, I don't know, not for me. I'm out of, I'm leaving. Right. I would just go straight upstairs. I'm too tired. I'm going to bed. And if they kept pushing it, I would just, we're going. We're getting out of here. Because me personally, it freaks me out. But
I mean, I think anyone meeting someone's family for the first time, especially after 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
I've been with Kylie for 20 years at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for you, you're not married and you've had girlfriends, do you think the meeting of the family was as awkward as it is in real life?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean that first time, because they'll tell you stories about how their family or their friends are, right?
Right.
But like when you meet them that first time, you're really meeting them, you're not hearing these stories, because usually those stories are told with rose-colored glasses, right?
Right.
I mean, those are always, stories that are told. They're showing their best side, or at least, glossing over the rest of the kind of stuff. You meet them in person and they weird, like, she kind of warmed him up to the, like, oh, he would vote for Obama 3 times if he could. And he's
Right.
probably going to talk to you about that. But, she didn't talk, she didn't push him into the, like, yeah, they're kind of like, a racist, but not in the direct way. They're trying to be nice. I mean, this is obviously before the whole situation went out of hand, but the way that they were trying to play them off was that they're nice enough white people who are trying, but still kind of stuck in that old racist way, which is
unfortunate. Well,
right,
yeah, unfortunate, common. But yeah. Right. Do you think kind of this was a horror movie trope of the getaway? Like someone you've only been with recently, and then you're going up, trip upstate. It's always upstate New York, I feel like, right?
Yeah, because most stories happen in New York. It's either New York or LA because it's cheaper to film there.
Right. And, we have movies like Fresh where the woman just met Sebastian Stan and, hey, let's go up north.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a very common trope or more common than what we think it is?
I mean, it is because, it's just because they have to come up with an excuse. Like, if you stick your head out and scream for help, if you're anywhere but up in the middle of nowhere, you're going to get help, right? People are going to come and say, what's that all about? Obviously not a lot of people will probably just ignore it, but eventually someone, or at least there's a potential that someone will come and help you. Now, like if you're in the middle of nowhere, obviously it, doesn't matter. You can get out and run for miles and you're not going to find, or nobody's going to hear you. So I think it just makes sense to, for any kind of movie like this, for them to have like a realistic escape, because like Chris, if he wanted to escape and he's in like, even a suburb with, houses close by and stuff, like it's, pretty easy to, even if you don't go in another house, but to hide next to other houses, hide in the backyard somewhere. There's a lot of places to go.
Right.
So, yeah.
So just from an isolation standpoint.
Right. They have to do that. It used to be easier back before, cell phones and the internet and all that kind of stuff, because then you could just be in a house with a locked door, right? And that would be enough. But like in our digital age, you have to be separated from everything in order to not get help.
Right.
And that's why they do the, in the middle of nowhere, obviously they can't scream for help. But again, it's not that odd when you don't get service, right?
Right.
Because there's always that in the, in this day and age, I don't have any bars, because they have to like start with that or else the whole story is going to end really fast.
Well,
like as soon as somebody's chasing them, they'll be, oh, hello, police, and then it's over. Story done.
But now, because we essentially have cell, coverage everywhere, it's my battery's dead.
Right. Yeah.
We've changed that. And it can happen in suburban America. We see, like Halloween obviously takes place in suburban America. Even with, cell phones, stuff like that. So, yeah, it's kind of like the isolation. Either you're on a vacation and you're going to like this isolated town that has like very few people in there, or now it's my relatives, or I have a house, out off the coast, or, 3 hours away and then drive, which most places in America, 3 hours away from major cities, you're in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like, if you're in any like, normal, urban area, you drive like 1 hour out of town and people got, Southern accents. It's just,
oh, absolutely.
It's odd, but yeah, it's true.
It doesn't take very far from Chicago here.
It really does not.
Yeah,
driving hours south, and all of a sudden people are talking like hillbillies, and it's like, what is this?
Oh yeah. Okay, so what are some highlights you think of this movie? Like, kind of stood out for you?
Like I said, I kind of mentioned a little before. I thought it was the acting. I thought everybody did a fantastic job. Like I said, there was like no one that I could point to that said, "Oh, they weren't that good." No, everybody did a fantastic job. Even people with like the smaller roles, like the grandparents as the, the groundskeeper, and the cook, right? They were fantastic.
Right.
The ability to show that pain through their eyes the way that they did, it was great. And those were just minor characters. And I thought everybody else did just as good a job as they did. And it's fantastic all around. So I did say highlights of this would just be the acting was fantastic.
I absolutely agree with that. And, the framing of stuff, when he's going under, being hypnotized, that the distance, like you're getting that tunnel vision, I thought was shot really well and really portrayed the depth and loss of consciousness that he was retreating into his own brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just I don't recall there being really jump scares. Is more tension, right?
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't remember them being a jump scare. I mean, there was like, kind of scares where like, somebody would come back in the room kind of thing, but they didn't do it as a jump scare. They just did it as like, oh shit, I got to,
right,
finish this up fast. It wasn't like a jump scare at all.
I mean, atmospherically, it was phenomenal. I think, jump scares are kind of an easy way to get people tense and jump in their seats, but this is more like a slow tension burning, like a build up and piecing together all the things you're noticing.
Mm-hmm.
So what about low points for you? For me, it was quite honestly the brother. Now he was supposed to be a roving douchebag, and he really came off that really well. But I feel like a lot of it was realistically how Chris got away was, I feel, his fault. And for maybe it's just his character that he was just the way he was. He maybe doesn't approve of Rose's methods for getting people. But I just feel like in the movie, he would have been more used to this and would have been less of a douchebag.
Yeah. I mean, okay. And, they were talking about how he's an MMA fighter and stuff like that. But like, I mean, I am an out of shape old dude, right? I'm pretty sure I could have taken that guy.
Right.
He weighs like 90 pounds. He's got like this little wisp of a mustache. Like it's barely even there. Like the guy was not intimidating at all. And I would think that like, if this is their business, if they're making how much money off of this, and a lot of that depends on them staying put, right? And not,
right.
They would have some form of security. I mean, I know that they counted on, like her hypnotism, to be able to shut him down by dinging the cup or whatever. But as we saw, like if there's no cup,
right,
you lose your cup. I mean, there's no security. You have no way to protect yourself. Like nobody in that family is going to be able to fight somebody. I mean, they're not fighters. I mean, that's not what they're scary about or anything, but they're not physically imposing at all. I mean, I guess like the grandpa could technically be,
yeah,
but he was outside. He wasn't even part of the whole thing. I don't know why he wouldn't come in and act as their security when they were going through all this shit.
Right.
Just outside running around in circles or whatever he was doing.
Like if it wasn't for the brother, I think that was just, I think it would have been, unrealistic for him to do what he did just to make sure, obviously if he didn't do it, Chris would have escaped, but.
Right. I'm just saying, for the amount of money that is involved for this, and this is like their business and they like need this to keep working. And they're apparently, well, I mean, we might see it in the sequel, but as of right now, it's implied that they're the only ones who know how to do this process.
Right.
That they would have a lot of security, especially the dude, the art dealer who's paying all this money. It would be very easy to pay a bodyguard, to like make sure the dude doesn't get away.
And we don't even know what happens to him.
Well, I'm pretty sure he died.
I'm sure he did too, but I mean,
it's like the guy who cut his skull open was dead.
Right.
There's nobody there to put it back on. I mean, technically, I guess he'd still be okay because your brain is not gonna die right away. But
right. Do you have any other low points from this movie, though?
Not really. I mean, I thought it was very well put together. Like I said, it wasn't anything that stood out as being low. Like I said, it just that they counted on that the little scrawny brother to be their only security was kind of off-putting, but that was it.
Right. All right. So let's talk about the twist. Obviously the brain swapping. We didn't know where this was going. We got I don't think we really got many indications from trailers. I think the trailer did a fantastic job of not giving anything away. Obviously we understood a little bit of the premise that something weird was going on there. But the twist, did you see that coming in the first watch?
Not specifically that. I mean, it felt like they were kind of leading up to something weird like that. Like I said, the two biggest things that stood out to me was the where he was talking about Grandpa, lost out to Jesse Owens. And just the way that he said that, it sounded like it held a lot more weight than just like a little trivia thing.
Right.
And then, of course, what, hypnotizing stuff, it's when any of that stuff comes out, I immediately know something nefarious is happening. So, and I knew something mind related was going to happen because, hypnotism is always something horrible with your mind.
Right. Now, did you think this could have been down the path of the Black Mirror episode where they're able to implant the other consciousness into the person and like one gets shut out? Do you remember that episode of Black Mirror?
Yes.
Yeah. See, I felt it was going to be potentially something like that. I didn't think it's actually brain swapping. I thought maybe just like a consciousness transfer.
Yeah, well, I mean, consciousness transfer is a lot harder too. I mean,
right.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see how you want to physically have your brain there, because that means that the real you is definitely getting transferred over. Like if it's just a consciousness transfer over, I can see how people would be, well, that's not really me. It's just a copy of me. Right.
Which is a great conversation piece for other stuff going at some point, is all the movies that have that, like Altered Carbon and stuff like that. Just never goes well.
Right.
So, I mean, the twist was kind of, I think the brain swap part was the biggest surprise. Like, something shady going on with the family. We got hints clearly throughout the movie. I just said I wasn't expecting that.
Right. Yeah. I think more of the twist was just that, the whole family was in on it.
Right.
And you're getting screwed. I think that was more of a twist than like the magic brain swap.
I mean, Rose played along the furthest, I feel. She didn't really show her true colors until like the very end, like the ball dropped, right? Where she's looking for the keys. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when she eventually was like, I can't give you the keys, right? But it was like, that scene went on for quite a while. Like he was like pissed off and yelling and shit. So like they should have realized it wasn't going to end well before then. But yeah, it was just, they were just building up that tension.
Did you see that with her being part of it? Do you call that when you were watching it the first time?
The first time, no. The first time I did not, because I like Allison Williams and I would never see her doing anything bad.
All right, so overall, we're doing this rating system here, and this one for this movie is going to be number of teacups out of 10. Would you give this movie?
I will give it 9 teacups out of 10.
9 teacups?
I don't think it's perfect, but it is excellent.
Yes, I would agree. 9. Yeah, absolutely. It was, for being his first like that, I mean, a solid home run, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it's going to be hard to top Get Out. I don't think it's 10-10, but 9 out of 10, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think this is a horror or more of a thriller?
I would say, I mean, it's definitely both. It definitely has elements of both, but I would say it's a thriller up until, like he wakes up in the basement.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Like, I think it's a thriller up to that point, and then past that point is horror. Okay. Because at that point, now he's, basically being imprisoned by a mad scientist and he has to escape, Right. So that's horror. But up until that point, it is a thriller because, he has the illusion that he can leave whenever he wants, and it's just a lot of weird stuff going on, but he's trying to figure it out. Yeah, definitely thriller up to that point and horror after.
Right. I completely agree with that. We were on that trip with him. I don't think we got a hint of it necessarily before him. I think we were along for the ride with him. So that's a pretty good thriller on that aspect. Mm-hmm. Horror afterwards, absolutely. It's a survival. It is a, get out, run for my life type situation. How do you get out of that isolation? How do you get out of that situation? And I think he came out of it pretty unscathed. Physically.
Yeah, I was going to say, mentally, he's probably going to be messed up for a while, but physically, yeah. I mean, yeah, he was a little beat up. I think the brother stabbed him.
He got stabbed in the hand.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, by the mom.
Right. And then the brother was choking him out, and then he got into the car crash.
Right. So yeah, I mean, he's not doing great physically, but I mean, he'll survive.
Right.
Mentally, he's probably gonna need a lot of therapy.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that good point for Get Out, but let's discuss Us if you want to go over the plot for that, Salem.
Sure. So yeah, the movie opens up with a little girl at a carnival, or like a what do you call it, boardwalk, like a beach boardwalk, with all carnival games and stuff like that. And she kind of wanders away from her family, ends up in like a fun house kind of deal, and sees another girl that looks exactly like her. And then you cut to 30 years in the future.
It starts in 1986, so yeah, 30-ish years, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, like 30 years in the future. So now she's older. She's married. She has 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Girl's like 15, because I think she's like trying to drive.
Right.
And the boy's like 10, 12.
About, yeah.
So yeah, so they go back to her grandmother's house, her mother's house, which is the house that she grew up in. Because I think they kind of insinuated that her mother passed.
Right, and that was the first time being back there since her mother passed.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, obviously we don't know how long, but it was, it's fairly recently. Anyway, so they go there for like a vacation, because obviously it's close to the beach. It's a nice weather area, so they're going there on vacation. The dad wants to go to the beach, and she's immediately like, I don't want to go to the beach, because obviously the beach is where that fun house is. She doesn't want to go back there. But he eventually convinces her, saying, oh, they'll leave before it's dark, whatever. So they go there. And she's obviously like in a panic the whole time. Her son like gets out of her sight for like 5 minutes, and she like has a panic attack. He sees some weird dude in like the red coveralls with like a trench coat on, with his hand is all bleeding. But nobody else sees this, just he does. So yeah, she finds him, after screaming and having a panic attack, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna go home. So they go home, and they're all, hanging out, just kind of winding down. And they're going to go to bed, and then the son comes in and says, hey, there's a family in the driveway. And they're like, what do you mean it's family driveway? Like, you're not making sense. So they go and look, and yes, there's a family in the driveway. There's, 4 people standing in the driveway, obviously very dark. You can't see who they are. And they, the dad goes out there, yells at him, no response. Dad comes back in, grabs a bat, goes back out there again, threatens him, like nothing happens. And then eventually, after, saying he's going to call the cops and all that kind of stuff, then like one of the figures like makes some weird clicking noises and waves their hand around like they're kind of like a commando, doing like directing troops without making noise, right? And they all kind of like scatter, and they all like, some of them are like diving in bushes and running and stuff like that. And that's like, okay, that's creepy, right? So the big figure, the big silhouetted figure, is walking towards the front door. So he's like, oh, okay. So he runs in the house and like locks the door. They're like pounding on the door, and they're like, okay, go check all the other doors and windows, make sure everything's in. And so they're going to check the doors and windows, and they see, people, they're all sneaking around outside. So they're like, okay, they're trying to get in. What's going on? So eventually, the big dude breaks in through the door. I think like, because the dad was trying to like hold the door closed, because they had a key. I think that's what they insinuated, because the lock opened.
Yeah, they had a key outside.
Right, yeah. So the lock opened, and they're coming in. The dad's trying to stop him. The dad gets nailed in the leg and falls down screaming. And then everybody, kind of filters into the house. And as they're like menacingly move closer, you see that these people are like copies of the family, right? There's, the dad, the mom, the daughter, and the little boy. And they're obviously like darker versions of them. They're not exact copies, but they're like, obviously, the same person, just were, different clothes and different hair and stuff.
Right.
So then the mom, who is obviously like the leader of these darker versions of them, basically kind of splits them all up, tells, the guy, the dad, to, the bad version, to drag him out to the boat. And I'm guessing like kill him and throw him in the lake was their plan. And then, the girl, she says run, and then the other one chases her down the street. And then the boy, they go up in like their closet. I don't know what they were supposed to do, but I'm sure death and bad things were involved. And anyway, and then the mom handcuffs I should say the dark mom handcuffs the normal mom to the table.
Adelaide, yeah.
Right. And then starts smashing her head in the table and saying she talks, but it's like this weird hoarse whisper talking, very dark. And she's saying a lot of weird stuff about just how she's gonna take over or kill them, whatever. She's gonna take what's hers, kind of thing, whatever. And so the dad eventually gets away out of the boat, and he makes his way back. I mean, there's a big fight out there, and he ends up killing the other dad with the boat engine.
Right.
And then he makes it back. The little girl, they're running down the street, and they end up hiding around a car. The dark version, the dark girl kills some other innocent civilian dude who tells them to get off their car. She eventually runs back to the house and she's okay.
All right. So we were talking about the little girl. She killed the innocent civilian.
Yep. And then, so the other girl, runs back and gets back to the house. The boy goes up in his game closet, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was supposed to be happening there. I think the other the dark little boy is trying to get him to set a fire or something. I don't know.
He seemed like he was a pyromaniac.
Well, yeah, the kid was definitely a pyromaniac, but I don't know if he was trying to get the other one to start a fire because there was no clear communication on what he was looking for there. He just they were sitting there staring at each other. The dark kid has got a weird hood mask, and the other kid wears a werewolf mask sometimes.
Yeah,
to scare people. I think it's kind of part of his safety blanket kind of thing. But the kid pulls up his mask and you see the whole bottom of his face is all burned. So obviously bad things happen to him.
Right.
Eventually he tricks him. He locks him in the closet, so he gets away. And then while that kid is banging on the door to try to get out, the dark mom has to go up to let him out. When she goes out to let him out, the normal mom breaks out with a fire poker.
Yeah.
She breaks the coffee table, and she's still handcuffed, but at least she can get away. So she gathers up the two kids because they ran back. They run out. They hear the dad honking the boat horn. So they get in the boat horn and they get away. And as you see the mom and the dark mom and the dark two kids come out to the dock as they're leaving. So they, they're still there and they know they left in a boat. We cut to Tim Heidecker and Elizabeth Moss, who are, they're friends. They were the friends they were at the beach with. And they have twin girls. So they're oh, I see something outside, so they're fighting over, they don't want to get up. They're comfortable. But they go to the windows. They're oh, I think I see something out there. It's some joke, whatever. And then they all get murdered. Yeah. They all just get stabbed, murdered immediately, right away, within a second. They're all dead. So then dark versions of them, and then they put on an article of their clothing, kind of thing. It seems like they leave on their weird red coveralls, but they take an article of their clothing to become them. It's what it kind of felt like.
Right.
So anyway, so they get to that house because they're going there for help. They get there, and then the mom opens the door, and they drag the mom in the house. And then the dad ends up fighting Tim Heidecker in a boat. And then he wins there. The mom gets handcuffed to the bed upstairs, right?
Yes.
And that lady is putting on makeup or something. I don't know. She got distracted. So she was putting on makeup and looking at herself in the mirror instead of doing what she was supposed to be doing and murdering this other lady. So she's putting on makeup. So her daughter, because the two kids are, kind of sneaking through the house. The daughter kills one of the twins and then, ends up killing the mom. Elizabeth Moss, the dark Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah.
But breaks her mom out. They end up killing the other twin on their way out. And then they turn on the news and they find out that this is happening like all over. Like there's footage of it happening in the city. It's like all these, they don't know it's copies of them yet. But there's like, people in the red, coveralls murdering all kinds of people in the street. There's dead people like everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, they all, so there's weird they had to kill one of the twins before they left. And then the dark girl like is trying to kill them in the car when they're trying to leave. And they end up, knocking her off the car and into a tree, and she dies weirdly, like still trying to like, like torture and like with this like weird smile on her face, trying to torture the lady.
Right.
Who's watching her die. But anyway, so that dark little girl dies. They get back in the car and they go back to the beach. I'm guessing they just went to like the downtown area, but it just happened to be right next to the beach. And so they see the little. Well, no, they were driving down the street and then they hear something underneath the car and they back up and it's the little boy with the dark boy with the mask. And they, kind of rightly figure out, hey, we should probably all get out of the car. So they all get out of the car and they see that there's a gas on the ground. And so he's going to like burn them. But instead of that happening, the little boy somehow controls him and like starts walking backwards and then forces the little boy to walk backwards in this burning car that was in the street. So the little boy, gets lit on fire and dies, a horrible death. And then the dark mom was hiding behind this car the whole time. So as the boy was walking backwards and apparently nobody was watching him, I don't know why they weren't, but anyway, so as he's walking past, the dark mom grabs him and runs. And of course they're by the beach again. So she runs back into the fun house. So yeah, they leave, the dad and the little girl, they, leaves them there at the beach. But then they see like, all the weird, red coverall people are still there and they're like eventually like linking arms and like making a human chain for some reason. I don't know why.
Hands across America.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't think they remembered Hank. I mean, we know that because they show you that, but like they don't know that.
Right.
So the mom, of course, goes through the fun house, goes to the place where she met the little girl originally. And then that's when she goes further into that area and she sees that it's connected to like this weird underground area, which is like, it's like long, like hallways. It's got like a weird, like back rooms feel to it. There's all these weird, like, classrooms with like all these, cages and rabbits all over the ground. And as she's looking through all of them, she finds, the dark mom, like drawing like little stick figures all over the chalkboard, and she's also cutting them up in like papers, showing like linked arm people. And then that's where she kind of goes over who they are, and this is the part that I had to pay attention to the second time around. She's saying that someone or something created a tethered copy of people, and then later abandoned them. Now that she doesn't know why or for how long at all. And again, she's just guessing this. They don't actually know this. She's just guessing this. But usually when, characters guess the kind of stuff, it becomes canon. So I'm guessing this is the canon. So they like are cursed to like live in these back rooms, tunnels underground, and like kind of live like a mock life version of what's happening up there. So like the people are copies and tethered as they kept saying in the movie. And they have to like, live this weird tethered version of what's happening. So it looks like a weird like improv show.
Right.
Right. Like they're all like, pretending to do the things that's like that they're actually doing up in the real world.
Right.
It looks like weird improv class. Like they show all these people down there. That's what it looks like. But they're all like copies of everybody that's up above. So she goes on to explain, this is, how she's been, struggling and surviving, down here. since they met last time. And then all the horrible things that she had to go through and shit like that. And, she's like, but the one thing that was great is like, I never would have learned to dance otherwise. And so then she starts dancing around and stabbing her, and they're fighting and fighting.
Yes, she was fighting.
Yes. But the dark mom was winning. Like, she was like way outmatched. She was just like playing with her, just like stabbing her and throwing her around. Anyway, so they eventually go in this other like bunk room with like all these like bunk beds. And they're fighting again, and somehow she manages to kill her with the poker. I don't know how that happens, but she does. And then she finds her son in the locker, but at that point, they go further into that story, and they show you that when she met the little girl in the fun house, that little girl actually grabbed her, dragged her down into the bunk room, chained her up, handcuffed her down there, and then went back to her life. So essentially, the dark little girl that was, living the improv, tethered life in the back rooms, took her place, by force, and then went back to her life up above.
Right.
And so all the trauma that we thought she had as a kid, like, oh, she couldn't talk because something scary bad happened to her, was really just she didn't know how to talk because they don't talk down there. I guess I didn't say that. Is
right.
The evil dark versions of them can't talk.
Except
they like grunt.
Right. Except Adelaide's dark version.
Right. Yeah. She obviously can because she was from the real world.
The surface,
got pushed down there. Yeah. Right. And her voice was a horse like that, probably because she hasn't used it in 30 years.
Right.
I'm assuming, I'm guessing that's what that meant. Or maybe she tried talking and they punished her by, I don't know. Who knows?
I thought maybe it's from part of the choking too. Like there's a lot of damage done to her throat when she was choked out initially.
That's possible. Yeah, there's 3 possibilities. Who knows which one's right or if it's something else.
Right.
But, yeah. So something bad happens, but yeah, that's what. So that's the plot. I don't think I missed anything. And then the very end of it is they show that the Hands Across America thing with all the red coverall people is like going through like forests and shit. So they're trying to like actually do the Hands Across America.
As opposed to like the towns, and there's huge gaps in the real Hands Across America. Now, obviously, I was live, but I'm pretty sure I didn't do anything with it because I was 2.
I remember people talking about it. I was too young to do anything. I was like 8.
Right. So. Yeah. So, what are your first thoughts on this? We went into this movie, trailers very vague as they should be. Mm-hmm. And at this point, we know, okay, it's Jordan Peele. What were your, how did you go into this movie knowing that you liked Get Out and then it was Jordan Peele coming back for the next movie?
Yeah, I was excited about it. And I watched it. And I remember, I was like, I kind of assumed it was going to be more of the same. It was going to be some kind of mind twist thing that was going to happen in it. And so I went to it watching. Did they show that it was like the same person in the trailers? I thought they did. Maybe not.
That they were the same person? Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I thought so. And they didn't show everybody, it was the whole family or more than one person. I think they just showed her.
Correct.
But they showed that it was there was a copy of her, like an evil copy.
Doppelganger.
Yeah, obviously, you didn't know why or how, but
right.
They just showed that. Because I want to say most of the trailers didn't have any of the talking in them at all. It was just all music and noise over pictures, I want to say.
The strong violin strings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Typical horror, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, I watched it. I want to say the first time I watched it, at a certain point, I was just like, come on. There's certain things I'm like, there's no way. But I get like that sometimes. It just when something takes one step too far and it just, blows that, we were talking about suspension of disbelief. So, I have a limit and it hit that limit. And I was just like, what? That's still obviously a very well-made movie. It's a good movie. Even with those issues that I was having in it, it's still a good movie. And there was just big questions that I had. I won't go into them just yet.
Yeah. Do you think? Yeah, I watched this. Like I said, as Jordan Peele, when you get out, and I was really excited for this movie to come out. Like I was watching this stuff. I was trying to avoid any videos that people put out there or explanations or anything like that. I didn't see this one in theaters. I had to wait for it to be on demand to rent it. But I thought it was a good follow up. We didn't know if it was going to be a sequel. We didn't really know what it was going to be, obviously, when we first saw it. But no, I think it was a good movie. It was kind of like a plot wise, the closest I compare it to is like Doppelganger or like The Changeling, where you have an evil version. Usually when their babies get taken and the evil version gets put up in place as a baby, right? Usually
like
the plot
body snatchers.
Right. Yeah. So it's a body snatcher changeling type scenario. But it was I think his good take on it, his take on it. There's some Easter eggs of we have the shot of 1986, the TV, the Hands Across America. There's a Chud VHS tape next to it, so he kind of gives a little bit of hint with Chud, being underground dwellers, right? I mean, that was a good way, kind of a little tease at what might be coming.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a fantastic movie. I'd said I don't think I watched it again until this rewatch. On this rewatch, I was trying to pay more attention to more detail as you would, typically for a horror movie rewatch, because there's more clues, there's more things to pick up on. It's not, I don't think necessarily as tension building. I don't think, but it was more of a I'd say scarier. Right? Like there's more like home invasion type scenarios or doppelgangers, which is, obviously plots in sci-fi and horror movies. Trying to figure out what's going on. And the explanation of, how they got there. Obviously, we have two sentences at the very beginning that says, there's thousands of miles of abandoned tunnels beneath America.
Right.
Which we can kind of go into that in the next process. But, on your rewatch, was it more enjoyable for you, you think?
It was. I mean, I was definitely looking for more details because, like I said, when I had some pretty big questions the first time I watched through it, the second time I was like actively looking for answers to those questions. And I didn't get all the answers, but I got more than I got the first time. I mean, but I was definitely watching it for more of that. But I didn't see it in the theaters either, so I saw it when it came out. This is only the second time I've seen it. But yeah, that first time I definitely had some big questions, and like I said, some of them were answered. Some of them were to my satisfaction. But.
Did you watch any theory videos after you watched it? I know I did, to help try to piece in some of the stuff I missed the first time when I initially watched it.
I was pretty confident that I knew what was going on. I was pretty confident that my questions were valid.
Right.
I didn't need anybody else to tell me that.
Right.
I don't know how it's arrogant of me.
Well, I mean, I think this movie definitely had more open-ended questions that we're able to debate more about with this, right? There's more to it, more lore, if you will, right? So let's go into the suspension of disbelief for this movie. I know that we discussed this previously before the rewatches that we had to suspend a lot the first time, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. It was, for me, it was, I mean, everything was fine and great up until they started talking about how, everybody has to live like that weird improv life in the basement.
Right.
And it was just so beyond believable to me that millions of people could live downstairs in tunnels, even magic tunnels that are
back rooms.
Yeah, back rooms that you go on forever kind of thing. It's just completely unbelievable that someone could try to live out a life, or at least a tethered life down there. Just a lot of the logistics of the whole thing of do you have any idea how many rabbits you would actually need? Because all they eat are rabbits. That's it.
Right.
They eat raw rabbit.
And they're, what, 6 pounds of meat?
Right. I mean, if that. But again, I mean, there's been constant studies showing that if you eat only rabbit, you will die. Because there's not enough. You need more nutrition than that. And so you need greens of some kind. So there's like, not only will these people not actually survive on the rabbits, but do you know how many rabbits you would actually need to feed that many people down there?
I mean,
you wouldn't be able to breed them in those cages that they have.
Right. I mean, it's implied that this is only America's. They only discussed the tunnels under America, right. Hands across America.
Correct.
And that's something I was discussing with the wife on the rewatch. I'm like, I didn't remember if it was worldwide or if it was just America-wide. And it is just America-wide.
Yeah. Now, they heavily implied that this is happening, as they say, Hands Across America, that it's happening all over America, but they only show this small section of Santa Cruz.
Right.
That's it. So, I mean, and again, even at the end where they show like people going further into the forest and hands, across America kind of thing, they don't actually say that it's happening anywhere else. It might just be a line from Santa Cruz. I mean, obviously it's heavily implied that it's more than that, but they don't actually show anymore.
Right. I mean, it's a bigger implication if it is the entire country. Right.
Right.
The dynamics, the logistics of everything would not line up.
Right. But I mean, yeah, just the logistics of it. Like, how do you clothe that many people? Like, how do you get rid of the waste of that many people? I mean, because there's no janitors or anything.
Right.
And every single person down there is living this weird, tethered, improv life version of what's happening up above. There's nobody cleaning up after them.
Well, maybe the tethered garbage man do the garbage cleanup down there.
I'm just saying, there's just so many large questions. I'm like, what this doesn't make any sense at all. Like, there's no way you could just be eating rabbits down there. There's no way you could ever have that many rabbits down there. I mean, like I said, like the clothes, the garbage, the waste. I mean, all of these things, it has nowhere to go. And I don't know. It was too much for me the first time. And again, there was just at the first time I didn't catch anything about how or why they were down there. I don't know what I was doing at that point. But I guess I was just, trying to figure out how it was going to end, rather listening to what the dark mom was saying when she was talking by that chalkboard.
Right.
And that's when they did get some of the answers where she had her theory of what it was, and it was that somebody made this weird tethered world. Obviously it could have been anything, right? It could have been like they tapped into another dimension and took, the copies of them, or like a many Earths theory thing, right?
Right.
They like somehow connected one of the other many Earths to our Earth and then took all those people out and linked them here somehow. I mean, who knows? I mean, it could have been something weird like that, but whatever they said, whoever made it, whoever like created this thing left. So they're down there and they have no idea why. So they're tethered and linked, and they have to like live out this weird improv life of the real version, but they don't know why.
Right.
They're just compelled to do it. Now they kind of are a little loose of like how some people can control the others, right? Like they had like the boy was able to control the other boy.
Well, because he was
to walk into the fire.
He was essentially, the old classic comedy of the guy in the mirror, right? Everything the one side does, the other side does. And that was just like a perfect mimic of what he was doing.
Right. But like no one else ever did that.
Right.
I mean, like the other red fucking coverall people were able to murder their other selves, which is obviously not copying what they're doing.
Right.
So it's, like I said, it was just really odd that like sometimes they had to like do what the other one did, but most of the time they didn't. It was weird. I was kind of thinking like, okay, maybe like they have to murder their other self before they get their own freedom kind of thing.
Yeah. Come untethered. Yeah.
Right. But then I was like, like the rest of this family is acting untethered, like all the boy and the girl and the dad are all chasing and trying to murder their other selves and not acting out their other parts at all.
Right. And, if we're going to this, what, say it stopped, right? Say they're clones, however, genetically they are completely identical. Mm-hmm. When do you think the experiment or whatever it was stopped? Did it stop at like when recently, or do you think it stopped after her kids were born? Because that leads to the question: if it's a complete mimic and you're a complete clone, and we can go into logistics of, birthing a child is if it's completely identical. If you clone a sperm, you cloned an egg 10 times, would it produce the same person every single time? Because that's what we're looking at, right? If the dark kids were born after the experiment stopped, it had to be that exact moment, the complete mimic, the tethering that would cause it to happen. Or do you think it stopped, like a couple years ago versus 30 years ago, whenever it was?
Well, I mean, what I think, kind of going on evidence-based, is that the experiment was over. Whoever created it or made this happen was gone before she got there. So since she's been there for 30 years, it had been over for at least 30 years. But judging that those people were still acting out in the weird improv class down there, it probably happened way before that.
Right.
Because they obviously were already in rags and eating rabbits and shit at that time. So like whoever, made that shit to happen is gone. And it has been gone for a very long time. There was another thing that kind of off-put me a bit is they were talking about how, when they were talking about her dancing, right? And that was how they like linked together. And they said like at the end of that dance, all the other people realized that she was like the chosen one that could think for herself, right?
Right.
And so and then she was able to work with all of them to make this happen, this attack happen. But then obviously she got married after that point. She had her kids after that point. You know what I mean? So like, if she was able to then see that she was the chosen one and could teach them how to like live beyond their tether, why did she still get married? Why did she still have those kids?
Right.
Why did those things continue to keep happening? And I guess it might be, you say, because the tether isn't broken yet and they can only fight it for so long or only at some certain level. Okay, that's fine. These were just big questions that I had watching it, and it was just off-putting enough where I was thinking about that rather than just watching the movie.
Well, I mean, because they showed her dancing in the ballerina outfit as a little girl during the dance sequence, so someone got those clothes. I would just say the experiment was still going on at that point.
Well, they were all ratty though.
Yeah.
Like if you look at when she was at the carnival, like she got a Thriller shirt, right?
Right.
But then the shirt that she was wearing in the back rooms there was like just a ratty black T-shirt.
Right.
Like it wasn't the same shirt. So again, I don't think the improv stuff was supposed to happen at all. I think they were doing that because they were still somehow linked and they didn't know what else to do. Is that they were just compelled to do that. I think they were created for some other purpose or called for some other purpose. And they just, without that direction, this is what they do.
So how do you think the tether got reversed? Like, do you think when they switched places that the dark Adelaide, the one that we were following this entire time, became the primary, and then the original little girl that was from, the above became the tethered? Do you think that like just crossing that plane was enough to change, like whoever's above was the primary on the tethering?
Yeah. Yeah, it would have to be. I mean, because the way that she was talking about these things happening to her.
Right.
It wasn't like she did them and then they echoed to the other way. So yeah. So she's saying they happened to her against her will, which means that the dark one that came up and took over had to then become the primary. So like I said, at that point, I said my personal favorite theory is that, it was like one of the many Earths, dimensions that got linked to ours that was, basically a copy. Everybody exists there, but instead of existing in their world, they pull them into this world. But because they're the same, they have to just, be tethered and just act out what they're doing because they have nothing else to do. They don't have a will of their own.
Right. I mean,
but obviously, what can change that and make you fight and kill your own self? I don't know. I don't know how any of that happened.
I mean, do you think they only stayed tethered when they were underground? Like once they broke that plane of existence, that they essentially became untethered, and then they were able to act on their own free will. Except for those,
I would say yes. Yeah, I would say yes, except for the little boy. Like that part again just didn't make sense to me. I was like, okay, it's like one or the other. Why are we still doing this? I don't get it.
Unless he was still young enough that he thought he could resist the urge to do the mimicking.
Yeah, that's possible too. I guess I didn't think about the age part of it.
Right. That maybe he was.
Yeah, maybe as your reason grows as you get older, it's easier to fight it.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So I mean, the suspension of disbelief was definitely, I think, bigger.
Yes.
In this movie, just logistically. I personally, I don't know if I like it. I don't necessarily want everything explained, but I would like to have some explanation to this. That could even be a prequel, realistically, is how this all happened.
Right. Okay.
I wouldn't mind seeing that. I wouldn't mind seeing the creation of it and figuring out why it happens. Sometimes, me, I don't want to know the whys, but it's very, very vague. And some horror movies work really, really well. You don't need to know that. And obviously, with like the Halloween franchise, the more answers we got, just the worse they got. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if we got explanations if it would make the lore worse. What do you think?
Well, see, that's the thing. I think in this instance, I think it would have been easier if we got less information. If we got less information, you could just, who knows where they came from, right? Who the fuck knows? I mean, yeah, I guess they kind of had to show it a little bit or else the switch doesn't work.
Right.
But I mean, they could have easily done some kind of magic portal shit or something. I don't know.
So you think,
but I think just having enough information to get you thinking, but not enough to make sense, I think, hurts my brain. I don't know. I don't know about you, but that's I'm trying to noodle together what this stuff means, and I can't because I don't have enough information, and the information I do have doesn't make any sense at all. And so that's why I guess I said that's what it's hard for me to suspend that disbelief. Right.
Essentially we're saying if A equals B and B equals C, D is equal to 2. Right. We're missing that step in between.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, having less information about where they were or what was happening down there, I think would have been better, because then it would have just been straight up horror. Who knows where the evil comes from?
Right.
It just comes from somewhere.
So I like that. That less information would have been better, because then we would have been filling in the gaps, more of a gap, right? Mm-hmm. So we just knew that D equals 2, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, but don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of complaints here, but that's, again, this is, just me trying to figure this out in my brain, and my brain just, arguing back, what the hell are you trying to do? It doesn't make any sense. But I did very enjoy it. It was a very good movie. I enjoyed it. It was very well made. I liked watching it even the second time.
Yeah.
It's still good watching it the second time, even though I know what's going on and it still doesn't make sense to me. It's still worth watching. It's still well made enough where I enjoy it.
Would you say that the amount of this suspension we had to do was the low point of this movie?
Yeah. I mean, definitely for me, because I get distracted. I mean, I don't know if other people do or not, but for me, if it gets past that line, that's all I can think about. Right. That's what I was thinking the whole time I was watching. The first time I was like, do they know that you can't, there's no way you could breed that many rabbits? I was obsessed with who's feeding, who's clothing these people?
Right.
Who's picking up after them? That's all I was thinking about the whole time. That's probably why I missed her talking the first time. Because I was still trying to think about what the hell, this doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. That's definitely, it is a low point. Like I said, we would have been better with less information. But highlight wise though, what do you feel worked the best?
I gotta say, the tension, the atmosphere, just the pure, kind of horror of it, is a highlight to me. It's just scary as hell. Doppelgangers, breaking into your house and murdering you that look exactly like you and then trying to take over your life, but they can't even talk.
Right.
They're cavemen kind of thing. That's terrifying. So I would say it was well done. It was very, unnerving, very, scary movie, but, yeah, obviously I had my problems, but that's okay. But the highlights of it was just, I'd say the storyline and the actual idea behind it was good.
I think the obviously there wasn't talking about. I think the family, their dual roles, especially Adelaide's the actress, I think she did the duality really, really well. You know, I think Jordan Peele is picking the right people for this movie too. I mean, obviously the other family with Moss, it didn't matter who was really in those roles, but the main family, I think they did an exceptional job. You know, Winston Duke. I don't remember her name.
Lupita Nyong'o.
That's her. Yeah, yeah. I think once again, acting wise, like very good.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely agree with that. They were very believable as two different people.
Yeah,
even though it was the same actor, they were very believable that it was two different people. Yeah, I mean, Tim Heidecker and Elizabeth Moss were in there. I mean, I guess kind of sort of like comic relief, right? I mean, even like their murders.
Yeah.
Really all
yeah, because she's trying to call the police, and then the song "Fuck the Police" came on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was like, again, like even their murders were just, you know, kind of comic relief. But I mean, they did what they were supposed to do.
Right. So the twist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the twist is more so of that the Adelaide we had been following was not the original Adelaide that we saw at the beginning, or you know, the kind of the end point of her son Jason watching her, realizing that maybe he knows the truth because he was down there, he probably heard this stuff or has some idea of being down there, right?
Right. I mean, again, like, yeah, when she was sitting there at that chalkboard explaining things, he could probably hear her. I mean, they were only like one room away.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, he could probably hear her. I mean, the twist was obviously, I should say the main twist was obviously that, you know, this wasn't the same girl, right?
Right.
It was that girl, like, took her down here, handcuffed her to a bed, and then took her life, you know?
Yeah.
That was the main twist. But yeah, I mean, definitely that kid, I'm pretty sure that kid knows because he was looking at her like, you know, she had scrambled eggs on her face.
Right.
He was definitely like wary of her. I think at that point, seeing what she was capable of and seeing her in that like kind of feral state when she was like murdering the other one, I think he realized that was, you know, she was the real dark one.
Right. I mean, I think Adelaide, when she was murdering her, not the surface self, she sounded a lot like them. Like she reverted back to that like Neanderthalish type grunting and primal rage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, she like went like feral and she was just like, you know, kicking the shit out of her like over and over and over again.
Right. So, I mean,
and he saw that.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that was the kind of, not necessarily a twist, but a really open-ended question is like, does he know?
Right.
You know, I think there's a big debate because, you know, there's signs, you know, throughout the movie that she's not there, especially with the music playing. She's trying to like snap in rhythm. Not that I could do it, but she was not able to do it either for a song that she supposedly knew very well and trying, you know, snapping her fingers to get her son to kind of get into the rhythm.
Yeah, I think she was just probably like in real life couldn't do that because I think she was trying to show her son the rhythm.
Right.
And then she was trying to be like, I think the scene was supposed to be, she can do the rhythm, the son can't, but it really came off as neither one of them can do it. But yeah.
Right. I mean, I thought that was, I know there's a lot of videos and discussion of it. I know people pointed to that. That was like, that might be a sign. And I can see that.
I mean, I can see that, but I think it was more just a filming thing. I don't think that was a sign.
Okay.
Because it would have been like they would have had a scene where the dad looked at her like, what the hell are you doing? You know, like something like that. They would have had like some kind of reinforcement that that's what you're looking at.
Well, her daughter gave her
her
daughter gave her a weird look while she was
It was more of a smirk. It was more of a smirk after that.
Okay.
Like, but she was like, yeah, okay, get into it like that. You know, like you can do it kind of thing. Like it wasn't like a, what the hell is wrong with you? It wasn't like a, that look. It was all like a, we can do it. We're all jamming together.
Or like mom's trying to be hip and she's not.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, the girl liked the song too.
Right.
She was singing along to it. So, I mean, I think it was just, she was just happy that everybody was jamming together, you know, like the family was grooving.
Okay. You know, like I said, you know, there's a pretty good, you know, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Changeling, Home Invasion and type thing. I think that, you know, I think obviously like so Chud being there is different from Get Out, right? I said overall really good. I think is Jordan Peele's take on that storyline. So we're doing for this one golden scissors because they carry around gold scissors and that's their primary stabbing weapon was golden scissors.
Right, yeah, all of them had one.
So what would you number of golden scissors out of 10 for you? For this one.
This one I will give it 8 out of 10 golden scissors. Again, it was very well made, a very enjoyable movie. There was just enough to unnerve me when I was watching it to not be as high as Get Out.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, definitely not as good as Get Out, but it seems like maybe that score could be raised if we rewatch it and catch everything more. There's more rewatch value, I think, in this movie than there was in Get Out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, in Get Out, I didn't catch anything new the second time I watched it. I just enjoyed it, even knowing what was going to happen. This one, I was like actively like, okay, is there any suggestion to like try to change my mind over what these big questions are?
Right. So we're going to ask the question: is it horror or is it something else?
Yeah, this one I think it's just straight horror. I mean, just the whole thing. I mean, there's really not much else to it. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of mystery as to like what happened to the little girl when she was younger, but that's more of a horror trope than it is a mystery thing.
Right. The creation of the evil, if you will. If you even want to call him evil, that's a debatable thing, right?
Right.
But
yeah, like in their family, yes, they were definitely the darker version of it, but I mean, that might not always be the case.
Right.
But yeah, no, this one I would just say is straight up horror. I don't think it's anything else.
Okay. So let's move on to the final movie of this trilogy that we're discussing tonight, of Nope. And, this is a big spoiler warning for anyone that hasn't watched Nope yet right now. So basically the plot is, we are introduced to the Hayworth family. Is that their last name?
Haywood.
Yeah. Which, they're talking about the first movie was of the black man riding the horse, and he didn't really have a name that wasn't there. They kind of just added that element for the movie, right? And we get Daniel from Get Out who's playing the brother in this movie, and their family owns horses for movies, right? They do horses, raise horses, breed horses for entertainment to put into movies, commercials, TV shows, right? And one day he's out with his dad owned farm. He's working heavily with it. And all of a sudden stuff starts falling from the sky, just little plinks of stuff here and there. His dad's played by Keith David, really great actor. He gets a token through the eye and ends up dying. And so, there shows like a key embedded in like the railing of their steps. And then we kind of get 6 months later while the brother is trying to keep the business going. He's on set trying to sell the horse. He's trying to do the sales pitch and taking up the family business from his dad. He's not really a people person, I would say. And just kind of waiting for his younger sister to show up, and she seems kind of reckless, but she knows the spiel and seems to be more personable, and people seem to like her more than him, right? He's just kind of there and just carrying on the family tradition. They've had in the movie, they had the first horse they used for the photograph too, or the first film. And kind of in there, we're getting interspersed stuff of chimpanzee on a set of a TV show, seemingly killing people, and we're getting,
which was fantastic.
Oh yeah, by the way. Yeah. And then we're introduced to, I don't remember the actor's name. He's from Walking Dead, who played the child star in that movie, in this movie.
Oh, Stephen Yeun.
Stephen Yeun, yes. Kind of showing that, hey, this guy wants to rent out or buy 4 or 5 horses to help pay the bills, and he did want to sell the horses to him, but he's not able to do well with the family business by himself, so he's selling them to him, and he has his own kind of pokey tourist trap, right? Just having a show. We just don't know why he's doing it, but they figure they want to buy the horses back at some point in time with a payment plan just to keep them. They help raise them. They get really attached to the horses. And then they kind of notice one night that there's something in the sky that just, it sounds like screaming going overhead, and just weird, like their cell phone just died, electronic failure that happens. And they kind of realize, hey, maybe we might have seen a UFO. They go to Fry's Electronics, which I don't even think exists anymore down over there.
It exists in California.
Okay.
So if this movie took place in California, it's fine.
Okay.
So, yeah. And all the Fry's everywhere else have closed.
Right. Yeah, I remember Fry's a long time ago. But they work with essentially Geek Squad guy, right? And get a couple cameras set up to help capture this. They go, hey, if we capture this, it could be, tens of thousands or hundreds of $1,000s. Getting the Oprah shot of the UFO, definitive proof. They talk about the footage that was released, a couple years ago of the air fire, the footage that the Pentagon released, right? And they're saying, we have proof that aliens exist. We just need more, and people are willing to pay for it. And the Geek Squad guy kind of intertwines himself into their lives. Like, he said, hey, I'm not going to watch your cameras remotely, but he ends up doing it. They see cameras go out and realize that there's something bigger out there, like a cloud that hasn't moved for days or even months, that a single cloud has been there this entire time. And he noticed it. The brother and sister didn't notice it. He just kind of there's like, okay, I'm in here for this too. You guys can't do this by yourself. I'm here to help you guys out. I want to be part of this. I don't know if he ever said anything about getting a cut of it or just there to help him for technology point, right?
I think he was just obsessed with UFOs.
Right.
And he just wanted to be a part of it. I don't even think he cared about
what they call them, UAPs now?
Well, yeah, that's the new official name, yeah.
Right.
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Right. and so, we cut back to, essentially a ranch show, right? That has like 40 people, they think they said all together were there watching the show. And you see the horse, and he's like, every Friday night for the past 6 months, I've got a visit. And here we're going to kind of sacrifice this horse to kind of draw it out, right? And then all of a sudden you see it go there and starts creating like a funnel cloud. And you go, okay, this is weird. Start hearing screams, kind of like jumbledness of people getting trapped and sucked up into the UFO. And then, that's like the next land over from them. And then they kind of go there, and all of a sudden it starts raining blood and like items from the show there. You go, okay, it's like right over their house. This is really weird. So on the commercial shoot that he was trying to do, they got a call for their just like, world-renowned photographer, right? He captures, looks like a lot of, animal killing, stuff like that. Just really good, really crazy guy, like just artsy. They say, hey, you want to do this? We have the impossible shot. I think they called it, right? We have the impossible shot. And so he goes out there and starts filming too, because he's older and artsy. His stuff doesn't rely on, digital or technology, electronics to work. So, he might be able to capture a lot easier than this high-tech gear that they have.
Well, I think he purposely built it so that it didn't need electricity.
Right.
Because, he said that he built it himself.
Yeah. So, then there's just more interactions with them. And then the main guy realizes that this isn't a UFO. I mean, it is, or UAP. It's an actual thing eating people. It's a creature itself, right? And he realized that, he had the flashback that, like, if you look it in its eyes, that's when it will kill you. Because if you don't look at it, kind of like a don't look up type thing, right? It'll leave you alone. And they're still, even after all this stuff, they're still trying to capture this shot. Like, they kind of went, whole hog into this, right? This is the make or break deal for them. And they set up sky dancers or wacky wailing inflatable armed two men everywhere, kind of have like this path to say, hey, this is electronic. When the UFO or UAP comes around, it shuts down. We kind of track, even though we can't see it in the clouds. We're going to get this money shot. And it's just, some TMZ guy comes in an electronic bike and hits that, the field and just gets thrown. And then, the brother tries to go save him and realizes that he's going to get caught. And then the filmographer guy, he goes, I'm getting this shot. I'm going to use myself as bait. He ends up getting eaten. The Geek Squad guy actually did something smart, is he realized that if he covered himself with barbed wire and stuff, he might be deemed unedible by the creature. And somehow,
I don't know if he did that on purpose. I think he just did it on accident.
Well, the first time, yes, and then he purposely started tying the barbed wire around himself. After that, when it clicked in his head, he didn't purposely get caught up in that, but then he used it as a way because he got eaten and then spit right back out, essentially.
Right. So I guess I was paying attention. I just took it as he was tangled up and was stuck.
Yeah. No, he saw him kind of wrap himself up more. And then it's just the brother trying to get, back and trying to get the shot. And last we really see of him is the creatures above him. And then like the sisters realizing that, and the creature is no longer a disc shape with a giant hole, which is his mouth. It like blossomed into this like gigantic alien creature. We're assuming an alien creature, right? At this point.
Right. Yeah. It looks like a flower wearing a dress.
Right. I'd say it's very anime-ish, like a horror anime creature, right? Like a legendary creature, almost,
yeah,
right?
I'll give you that, something like that.
And she ends up going back to this ranch, or the cowboy ranch there, and realized that the well was a giant camera, and then she's feeding it off with like a hot air balloon to try to lure it, which I don't know why it was that dumb to try to eat it, and she lures it, gets the picture, and it eats the helium-filled balloon, and it pops, and seemingly it dies. Right, and then in the dust she sees her brother. We don't know, and that's kind of how it ends. I only watched it once at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my first thoughts, it was interesting. It was a good, I think, a good callback to the atomic age, the Saucerman age, right? Lore wise, not much there.
Yeah, no, there was no background for the
right
monster at all.
And kind of my first thought was, why would they keep doing what they're doing? I mean, obviously they need money, but essentially I felt like the feeding ground were the horses and the property next to them, and their house and their ranch that they own with the horses were kind of like the toilet where everything unwanted would go from the creature eating. I mean, is that what you took from there?
Yeah. That's about right. Is it literally like parked right above their house and then like essentially crapped out everything it didn't want
right
on top of their house.
I mean, not crapped out, but more like an owl can like regurgitate the bones of when it eats and the fur. I feel like it's more like
an owl pellet.
Yeah, I feel like it's more like owl pellets. But what were your first thoughts when you watched this? We just watched it this weekend.
I mean, the whole like, it won't eat you if you don't look at it kind of thing was a little goofy to me. Yeah. I mean, that was about it. I mean, other than that, it was a pretty standard, like, monster movie. I mean, there's the twist of they're trying to film it rather than just kill it.
Right.
But, other than that, it was just, standard kind of monster movie.
Yeah. Rewatch, I think it definitely requires a rewatch at some point, probably. We have to get through this next month of October with all the movies we got to watch for that, but
all right.
I'll rewatch it probably really soon again, I think, just to see what more there is, if I'm missing anything else in it. I think it has some rewatchability, not as much as Us, but I think there's probably gonna be stuff that we missed.
Probably. There was a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, I don't feel like I was missing anything. Like, again, at this one, I think he took a little bit from Us, where he's saying like, okay, maybe I don't have to give you as much information,
right?
Like, I can just run with this without giving you any background information. You just know that this thing exists and that's it. Like, you don't know anything else about it, and that still works. It's still, like I said, a monster movie. You don't need the background for it. So yeah, I think he probably, I don't know if he learned the lesson from us, but I like to feel that he did, and that's why he took the weird lore out of it and just kind of made it a thing.
Right. It almost seemed like a Burt I. Gorman or a Roger Corman giant monster movie, right? Like the giant claw or something like that. Just not much explanation. Like some of these monster movies, like, oh, it's it bit an atomic bomb dropped on it and became giant or something like that. I think it's a really good creature feature or monster movie, giant monster movie, is what it turns out to be. I feel.
Yeah, no, it's just a well-made version of it. Like an actual, like, you know what I mean, like well acted, well kind of written out. Like it's like there's definitely a plan put in place for this movie. And I gotta say, I was probably for a while there, at least towards the end, I was definitely more invested in that monkey story than I was in the actual movie. I'm like, yeah, this UFO is great and all, but what is going on with this bloody monkey?
Oh, man? Yeah,
I need to find out. I need to know more about this.
Right? Yeah. We'll get to the monkey in a little bit here, but obviously it's a UFO, UAP, giant creature. We have to have some suspension of disbelief, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, but this is your standard, I'm watching a movie level suspension of disbelief. Like, if you refuse to be like, UFOs are so unbelievable, there's like 50% of all movies will now be unwatchable to you. I mean, they're everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, if you can't believe that UFOs can make a story, then yeah, you should not be watching horror or sci-fi or anything of the like.
I mean, do you think any disbelief came from their continuously wanting to capture it on film, especially after being dumped on blood? Like, I'd get out of there.
I don't think so. I mean, seriously, I mean, because at that point, I mean, obviously they knew something was going on and they knew that they would die, but I think they still thought they were okay. You know what I mean? Because they stayed in the house and they survived just fine. I think at that point they were like, yeah, if bad stuff happens, we'll just run in the house. But think of how rich we'll be if we get this thing on camera.
Right.
And I think they were more thinking of that. They were, seeing they had dollar signs in their eyes. And again, by running in the house and hiding, they survived and they were okay. Even the house survived.
Right.
So I think at that point they were like, yeah, if it gets bad, we'll just hide in the house. But this is, worth the risk at that point. This is obviously before things got out of hand.
Right.
At that point, I think they could handle it.
Okay. So, I mean, I'd say, creature feature, stuff like that, you have to have some suspension of disbelief. Do you feel this is more of like the creature feature, giant creatures were driving movies, right? Generally speaking, they were the popcorn eating movies. Do you feel like this was kind of in that same line? Do you think that's just kind of like the feel that any giant creature movie is going to have?
Yeah. No, I'll use a food analogy for this.
Okay.
A lot of people nowadays, they like to take a common food, right? Like, let's say, whatever, like mac and cheese, grilled cheese, something like that, right? And then they like to say that they elevate it, right? They add some great element to it, right? And it elevates it to this next level. So it takes something simple, but you add enough of good things to it and it elevates it to the next level. I think that's what happened here. I think you take the basic creature feature because at its heart, that's what it is. What you put in, like, good acting, interesting subplots, like interesting, character interactions, backstory, all that kind of stuff, and it elevates it. So it's like the creature feature elevated.
You think it's what the creature feature always tried to be?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if it tried to be that. I don't think it needed to be that. Not
Burt Gorman or Roger Corman creature features, but like Creature in Black Lagoon creature feature.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would like to be, and I think in their time they were, because they didn't have movies with this level of depth even at that time. Even the dramas didn't have that level of depth,
right.
But as we progress, as a medium, yeah, I mean, so it gets to that point. This is just a progression of a well-made and better creature feature as it moves on and evolves. This is what it becomes. The good version of it becomes.
I mean, we've had creature features. That Sharknado kind of is one. But do you think this is the first like giant creature in a long while that took itself seriously since probably like Cloverfield?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's been a while since we've had anything. I mean, I think there was a couple of Godzillas in there, but they weren't very good.
No, they were the Godzilla movies we got were Godzilla movies. That's all they were. That there wasn't. They tried to be more human, and it didn't work. We didn't like that.
Right. Yeah, but I'm saying like as far as a good one where like it was actually well made and done correctly. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Well, I mean, did you see? Was it Monster with Catwoman, not the Christopher Nolan Catwoman, Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis, where she's able to like they're able to go on the playground and wherever they were, like a creature popped up in like Korea or something like that and started destroying the stuff. It's a couple years old at this point. I think it was called Monster.
Kind of sounds familiar. I know what was the movie where there was like giant monsters
and she's able to control, like mimicking what they're doing. Yeah, that's it.
Really?
Yeah, pretty sure.
I don't know. It's been a while. I don't remember. This has been a while, but sure, yeah.
I think it was called Monster. Oh, Colossal. Sorry, it's called Colossal. 2016. Yeah, black comedy.
No, the one I'm thinking of was not a comedy. It was like people were like they were like traveling cross country, and it was kind of like a post-apocalyptic thing where like there was these giant monsters.
Oh, Pacific Rim.
They were like, no, they weren't in big robots fighting. I know, Pacific Rim. No, it was like a couple. It was like a guy and a girl that were trying to like go like cross country in this post-apocalyptic world with these big giant monsters.
Doesn't sound familiar to me.
Whatever. I'll look it up later, but yeah.
Okay, so I mean, we obviously with creature features or not creature, giant creatures.
Oh, sorry, it's monsters.
Monsters.
Yes, with an S. I knew it was. I was like, I was pretty sure it was monster, but no, it's monsters.
Oh, yeah. That was like a Last of Us type feel, right? But,
right.
With the dog. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm thinking of. You said monster, and that's the movie that popped in my head, which is monsters.
That's right. Sorry. Like I said, creature features sometimes, good creature features sometimes are believable things. Like you have Jaws or Cujo, where it is a real life animal just on a rampage. But giant creature features, yes, you have to have some suspension of disbelief. But we didn't know that's what it was going into this, so we didn't go into it knowing it was going to be that. I mean, I think the trailers kind of gave it away that it was a UFO. Like,
and that's okay for this movie. That's okay because that's pre-twist,
right?
So they're not giving the twist away, and I think the twist is what's selling.
Right. So, any highlights that really stand out for you in this movie?
The bloody monkey side story, man.
That we need more of it.
Yes. I know. I need to know what happened. Like what? I mean, obviously they give you more of it later on, and they kind of explain it. It was just, obviously it's a monkey in a stressful situation with a pop balloon, and he cracked, right? But yeah, that's like messed up because that happened. I mean, like the chimp that like ate the lady's face and hands off, like that's a real thing. Like that was a real story, and that's what happened in this one because they actually show the lady later on
with her face partially eaten off and reconstructed.
She has like no lips and her teeth are just like she looks like a skull. I feel bad for her, but again, that was just a fantastic side story. There's no reason for it to be
there wasn't.
I thought it was great though. I thought that was the best part of the movie for me. But really, there's no reason for this to be here. Like they're gonna cut this whole thing out. I was thinking about it, but I was thinking about how long it was because it's significantly longer than the other two movies. And I'm like, what could they have cut out of this? I'm like, they probably could have cut out the whole Gordy.
Yeah.
Right? Could have just cut that whole thing out, but then I would have lost my favorite part. Like I don't want him to cut that out. Well, so I'll deal with the over 2 hour runtime if I get to keep the bloody monkey.
I mean, did his character really need? It was like, he's an old child star. That's all that you really needed for his character arc.
You didn't even need that. He was just running a cowboy thing. Like you didn't need to know anything about his backstory at all.
So do you feel like lore was just add lore?
Yeah. And that's good. That's in this case it was great.
Yes.
Like in this case it was awesome. There was no lore with the main monster.
Right.
But there was lore with this weird ass side story. But again, it was the right kind of lore for the right story, and I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the filmographer was a great character. You know, even the Geek Squad guy, like he was annoying at first, and he kind of like, oh, he's like the lovable idiot, right? And like, I think, especially in creature features or giant creatures or even horror or sci-fi, that you always have the one passionate guy about something that's willing to risk his life for the fame and knowing that he was able to get his impossible shot, his dream shot. I feel like it's a very common thing sometimes.
Yeah. And also he was played by Michael Wincott, who I love. I mean, he played the bad guy in The Crow. he was in a lot of other things around that same time period. And he's got that fantastic voice, and he just really sells, you know, like a very serious character.
Right. Well, what about low points? I mean, there's going to be some low points, I think, in this movie.
Low points. Let's see. I mean, it was just the kind of weird, bizarre thing where he's like, just don't look at it and it won't kill you. I mean,
yeah.
What? What are you talking about? Like, what does that even mean? But yeah, like I didn't get that whole thing. And it was like pointless. You know, I don't think you needed that at all. I don't know why that was there.
Right. Because that's a weird thing. Like if this creature is a predator, like I never heard of a predator just not going to eat you because you didn't look at it.
Right. Yeah. Like if the prey is looking at you, it's still gonna try. I mean, it's not gonna catch you because you're looking and you can get out of the way right away. But like, it's still gonna try. It's not gonna stop just because you're looking.
Right.
It's not like.
Right.
You know. Yeah. I mean, I know cats do that sometimes where like you're looking at them and they stop, but like it's not like when you turn away they're gonna leave. No, they're just gonna wait till you stop looking at them for a second and they're gonna move real fast.
Right. I mean, that's a fair low point, I think, for this. Small cast. I mean, it doesn't need to be big. I don't think his casts are generally big anyway in these things. They don't need to be. But let's go into the twist. You know, did you feel until the twist came that it was a UFO? Like it was almost like the War of the Worlds. You have creatures sucking you up just to do something with you, or like crap, what's that? What's Skyline? Right?
Okay. I haven't watched it, but yeah, I know what it is.
You watched Skyline. I thought you were watching them out of order.
No, well, I tried. I tried watching 3 because I didn't catch that the 3 was the E in Skyline. I guess I didn't pay attention to it. And I was watching the beginning of it, and it's like, you know, it was kind of like a previously on,
right?
Like the beginning of the movie, and I'm like, this is way too much movie to put into like 5 minutes. I'm like, hold on a second. I like literally paused it and looked it up. I'm like, this is the 3rd one. Like I didn't even watch the other 2. Like, but now I know what happens in the other 2 because it already summed it up in the 5 minutes that I watched. So I mean, I'll get around to watching it eventually. But at this point, I know what happens in them. So whatever. We'll get there.
Do you think the twist worked though, with it being a creature versus a spaceship? Do you think it really made a difference?
I just thought it was interesting, you know, because I can't really think of an instance where that was done before. So, I mean, I think that's interesting. I mean, the insides of it being like, you know, the garbage bag, you know, entry in a haunted house, which is terrifying to me.
Right.
So, I mean, those deaths were terrifying to me. But being stuck in his guts that were like set up like that. I mean, it was just an interesting twist. I mean, does it need to be there? No, but it's still fun. I mean, but before that point, I don't know. I mean, I thought they were just abducting horses and people to like test on them and shit.
Right.
You know?
The standard UFO, right?
Yeah, because at that point, you didn't know that it was digesting them and then spitting out what it didn't want.
Right.
You didn't know that. It was just like you knew that it was sucking up horses. And maybe sort of people. I think at that point it was just horses.
Right. It was almost like a that felt like a Killer Clowns from Outer Space vibe, where they're taking people and turning them into things just to eat them. Right.
Right. But yeah, at that point it was like, it was taking stuff, but you didn't know it was digesting it.
Right.
I mean, looking back on it, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because there was like weird screaming and shit, and that was like people literally getting digested.
Right. Yeah, it's weird. It's like a chipmunk just stuffing his cheeks and just saving stuff for later.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think of the last shot, though? Do you think that the brother's alive? Do you think that she was just seeing a ghost through the haze? I mean, I know there's a lot of people debating whether he's alive or not, because we didn't really get a definitive answer. Do you feel like the final shot was him alive?
I've watched a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows, and the rule that I go by is, did we see him dead? And did they verify that he was dead?
Right.
The answer is no, which means he's still.
If there's no body, there's no death.
Well, I mean, even if body is also a possibility, you can come back. Somebody like a doctor has to verify that they are dead, or they have to be very obviously dead, like their head's cut off, they're cut in half. I mean, something like that. So where like they're obviously dead. And if you don't see them obviously dead, then in my mind, they're still alive.
It's okay. So you took it as he's alive. So I took it as he's alive too.
He is alive. Yes.
I think that's just a verification that all the sister's work didn't go in vain, that he's still alive.
Right. Like, again, they didn't show him directly getting eaten, so
right.
It's not out of left field that he's still alive.
Okay. I like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, it was an interesting twist. I mean, it was kind of, sometimes you don't get to see the full monster, right? Obviously, Cloverfield being one of them. It was an interesting shape of it. Like I said, you had what you said, it was something in like a dress.
That's what it looked to me. When it was like flying up after the balloon in the sky, it looked like an orchid wearing a dress. That's what it looked like.
I mean, it almost looked like an underwater jellyfish type thing, that like the tentacles everywhere and just like this wind, like thin body. It looked like a, kind of jellyfish floating in the air to me.
Yeah, I get that.
So, all right. So for this scale, we're going to do number of sky dancers out of 10. What would you give this?
I will give this movie 9 out of 10 wacky waving sky dancers. And that's because the movie itself, I would probably give an 8, but because of Gordy, I'll give it a.
Yeah, I love sci-fi. I love UFOs. I love stuff like that. But especially watching these all back to back, I mean, to me, I feel this was his weakest movie. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably have to give it that's a 7.5.
Yeah, and that's fair. Like I said, I'd be right there with you if Gordy.
I mean, yeah, Gordy was awesome. That was
Gordy pushed it up.
Yeah, so you gave him bonus points for bloody chimpanzee.
Yep,
that's fair.
Exactly, that's bonus points.
Right. So, is it horror? Is it sci-fi? Or is it an American Western? Or all three? What do you think?
I definitely think it has elements of all three. I would say it's probably more sci-fi than anything else. I would say sci-fi, then horror, then Western.
Okay.
Because like I said, there's definitely elements of all of them, but I would say it's more sci-fi than anything, because there wasn't really like any like traditional horror, like, suspense or, like hunting or fear or anything like that. I mean, there kind of was when they were hiding in the house, but that was more played off as like a comedic thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like you didn't really feel that they were seriously in danger. And when they did, it was more like a sci-fi danger than a horror danger. So in my mind, I'd be sci-fi first, horror second, Western third.
Yeah. I mean, this is something we've discussed and touched on briefly, is, sci-fi horror. And I said, feels like the atomic age of creatures, which, 50s and 60s was the horror realistically. So I think it fits into that sci-fi horror nature. Definitely more sci-fi, just because, I don't know, it's going to be hard to not classify aliens as sci-fi, right?
Right. Yeah. UFOs always get sci-fi.
Right. So, I mean, overall, the trilogy of movies that he's written and directed, obviously he wrote the screenplay for Candyman, which we'll discuss in the Candyman franchise when we get to it. But is there so we have from him we have Thriller, we have Changeling, Body Snatchers, and we have Alien / Giant Creature. What would you want to see next from Jordan Peele? What other kind of trope or plot line do you think he'd be able to take on?
Let's see. I'd like to see it just do a straight Western.
Straight Western?
Right. Here's what I want everybody to think that it's going to be a sci-fi or a horror Western, but it's not. It's just going to be right. I think that's going to be the twist. Is it's just a Western.
Just Western. Mm-hmm. I would like to see his take on slashers.
Okay, yeah, just like whatever that murders people one by one kind of thing.
Right, because he leans, his social commentary, especially in that he has with the black community, and unfortunately the trope that exists in the slasher movies. I want to see his take on that. I like to see that. I think he could elevate. I'm saying we talk about he's taking these things and elevating it. Slashers are just mindless things, right? A slasher is a slasher. I want to see what he'd be able to do with that. How if he'd be able to pull off the elevation really well. I think he would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could argue that Candyman's kind of in that realm, but I want to see a slasher.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get you. Makes sense.
Now, here's one other topic I have for you. We've discussed this briefly in the past. Do you feel overall his movies work as a full-length movie, or do you think these kind of feel like Twilight Zone episodes?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel like they're Twilight Zone episodes. And I think all of these stories could have been told as just Twilight Zone episodes. And I think, like I said, what they're doing here is they're just adding more to it. I mean, fortunately, adding more to it and with these movies and these stories it works for
right.
It, right? It makes it good. They're still good movies because of it. But I think you could easily cut these down to be, 1 hour Twilight Zone episodes. And I think you would get the same point across. Maybe not as well because there's a lot of cool side stuff and character building and, the suspense and stuff you'd probably have to cut out in order to tell the whole story. But
right.
You definitely could. I mean, and they definitely work as Twilight Zone episodes. The ideas of them definitely feel like Twilight Zone episodes.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's Twilight Zone. I feel laid the groundwork for a lot of storyline and story arcs that we've seen for the past 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they're good movies. I hope he continues doing these. I hope he doesn't get burned out and doing horror movies. He's doing a bang up job so far. I hope he can keep the momentum going because people have comparing him to like John Carpenter or Wes Craven. And obviously those guys too also have movies that aren't good that they make, right? Do you think we'll see a flop from Jordan Peele?
I think on a long enough timeline we will. I mean, even Carpenter had some that were less than stellar.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I know there's a quote that Jordan Peele said is that they said he was the greatest, living horror creator, and he said I won't take any of that John Carpenter slander,
right?
So he's definitely a fan. But I mean, Carpenter had some that were not as good. I mean, I wouldn't say he had like bad movies, but he definitely had some that weren't as good, and I think he'll be in the same boat. Eventually, he'll make one that's not as good.
Yeah, I mean.
I think his name will still carry weight, just like Carpenter's name held weight for a long time.
Or Craven.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think his name will, carry weight because obviously he's proven that he can do it more than once. He's not a one and done. He's not a one-hit wonder.
Right.
He's definitely keep going. So, yeah, his name will still hold weight. Again, some of the movies in the future won't be as good. I mean, that's just going to be granted, but I think he'll be good. I think he'll be doing good for the future.
Right. I think for any foreseeable future, I'm going to be excited for anything that has his name attached to it.
Yeah. So far, yes. until he makes something that, is just not good in my eyes, then I might not be as excited. But as for right now, I am definitely excited. So.
Yeah. And I said, I can't wait to see what he does next. I look forward to his stuff. I think he's a great director, a great writer, and this new wave, this renaissance of horror movies had for the past really 7 or 8 years. And I hope it continues. You know, the 80s was a huge year for horror movies. I think the 2010s and the 2020s are really shaping up to be that next wave.
We can only hope.
All right. Is there anything else we can think about discuss on this? I don't have anything else.
Nope. I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and close this off. So stay tuned for next week's podcast. We'll be discussing video rentals, old school versus new school, old school being video stores and new school being video on demand. So this is Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
And this is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.